But I do want to tell you a little something that's not in the book, because, the journey always continues.
Yes.
So in the book, I talk about how I had breast cysts. And then all the antiparasitics, the cysts all went away. And then last December, I went and had an ultrasound done, and they said, "Oh, you've got a breast lesion in the left breast." I said, "Okay." So I went to a breast surgeon because I told my husband, I said, I'm so tired. I just want him to cut it out. And I don't really care at this point if they just take my breasts, and he's like, "You're crazy." I was like, "I'm so tired." So I go to the surgeon, and he orders another test. And so we do the second test because the first test isn't good enough, right? And it says the same thing. So then he says, "Well, I want to do the other breast." And I'm like, "Well, why couldn't you do all these tests at the same time instead of, So I didn't do it. But I had gone back to his office, and, at the first visit, he's like, "Oh, yeah, we can cut this out. It's a real easy surgery, just a little cut, pull it out. It'll be done. No problem." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do this." So when I went back after I refused to do the other breast, he says, "Well, I can't do this surgery." Now, I did tell him about my book. I taught him about parasites and the relation to this issue. And he said, "You won't quit smoking." And I said, "Let me tell you something. I've had 8 surgeries, and I smoked for 40 years. What does that have to do with this surgery? It has nothing to do with it." So I said, "Well, look, here's the bottom line. I only need to know if you think it's bacterial or if you think it's parasitic." He said, "Oh, it's definitely bacterial." I says, "Okay, great." So I come home. I took my turpentine cream that has camphor in it, and I put it all over my breast in the morning and at night. Then I went down to see Dr. Axe in Tampa, and he says, "Here, get this Honest 03 liniment cream. It's ozonated cream." I said, "Okay." So I ordered like 5 boxes of this cream. So I'm using the cream that Dr. Axe is having me use, and I'm switching in between the turpentine. I kid you not when I tell you, the turpentine literally was pulling the bacteria through my flesh. So it got to the point that it created somewhat like a blister appearance. And I let it do its thing. I didn't try to pop it or nothing like this. And sure enough, within, a couple of months, it finally popped and all of this pus came out. All this bacteria came out. So now the little lesion is just itty bitty. And so I continued to do my creams. And the other day, it formed that blister again, and it pulled even more of the bacteria out. And I can tell you that it is so minute right now, but I'm going to keep working until I get every bit of bacteria out. But it just goes to confirm that these lesions and cysts are either parasitic or bacterial. And there's many, many studies to back it up. And there's natural remedies to pull it directly out of your skin. It's not an overnight process. This has been going on for 8 months, and we've got it down to just an itty bitty little thing. So these remedies are out there, and it takes people to invest the time to research them, just like you did. You've spent thousands of hours researching. Sophie has. I have. And you see some people out here, they just want the answers. Mm-hmm. They'll say, "Well, what do I do?" Well, I'm giving you keywords to go research. Now it's time for you to do the hard work, because what I've learned also is that we can tell people all the stuff we've been through, all the stuff we've done to get where we're at. But if they don't invest the time to learn it, their mind is not going to comprehend the work that it takes to get your life back.
You're right. The other day I was dropping knowledge on someone's post because I saw them, and I have learned through my research, and I have other naturopath friends. She backed this up for me. I found this article on PubMed. Now I know the NIH and all of that, but they will publish the truth about things. They will. If you go to look, you will find the truth despite what they speak. They have it published. So I found that NAC interacts with ivermectin in the liver. NAC cancels ivermectin out in the liver. So I saw a friend of mine on this post, and she was saying that she was taking, the NAC and ivermectin together. And I just put in there, I'm like, that the NAC cancels out the ivermectin in liver. And then there was other people that kind of jumped in, and they're like, where is this? I gave them the website. I gave them the research paper. Now, this research paper is not just a paragraph. It is pages and pages of stuff that you have to read through and find the information. And it's one section in this paper that says it, but it's many, 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 many pages through. I put that in there. They didn't want to believe it. I don't believe that's true. Really? Okay. Well, I don't have cancer. It says if you're treating for cancer. I'm like, you know what? I talked to a licensed naturopath who has a bachelor's in science degree and is a nutritionist. And they said the same thing, that, well, if you're not treating for cancer, but if you want to be safe, don't take those two together. She suggested I take NAD plus. No, it's not cheap, but I'm taking it and I'm noticing a difference. And it's an alternative for your mitochondria, for your energy, for all of that, without canceling out what you're doing. Because if you're canceling, you got to do your research for what you're taking and make sure there's no interactions. There with ivermectin, there's 91 interactions. Echinacea is another one. You can't take it. You cannot take echinacea with ivermectin. It cancels it out. So if you're going to take something like that, you have to be off the ivermectin a couple days and then take it. I don't want to go off of it. I'm taking that indefinitely. So I just don't take echinacea. I don't take NAC. So it's all about doing your research. And no, people want the answer. I know, Carrie, you get as many people as I do. Can you help me? Help me do this. Okay, I don't mind helping people at all. What I don't like is when I give you the information and you don't learn anything from it. You don't take from it.
And they won't hear what you've done, right? They're listening, but they're not hearing what you've done. They don't understand the amount of hard work and dedication it is to get your life back. It's not an overnight process, and it is forever. So these things that Sophie, you and I and others that have been successful are doing is every day we are proactive. We are not reactive. We are not waiting for another event or for something else to come along to worsen. We are being proactive every day that we breathe because we understand the amount of money that we have all invested in regaining our health. We understand the time, the suffering, and the people that are not going to do the research, they're never going to get well because they haven't taken that first step of commitment to their own life and well-being. And there's nothing that we're going to be able to do to stop that. And I've said it, back 4 years ago, I just wanted to save everybody. And it would really hurt my heart. I'd get really emotional to where my husband was like, you've got to stop talking to these people because I felt their pain. I felt their journey. And I would become very upset. And I'm like, I've got to save them. I've got to save them. And then, you go through all these different things with people, and then you realize it is not my job to save anyone. I can teach people and I can share my journey, but the hard work, it has to come from them. And the only one that's going to save them is their Savior, whoever their God is. We can give information, we can do our best to teach and share, but at the end of the day, they've got to invest that time and research, because I know both of you know when you read one study, there's 10 more that you have to read that's being cited, because that study is taking bits and pieces from all these other 10. And those 10 are going to take you to 10 more each. And you've got to read all these studies, because all these little pieces of the puzzle all matter.
You're right. I mean, there's tons of where I read something and then I go and I want backup, and I want backup to that backup. And when I look at how people have treated or how they've done things or how they're saying in their wellness, I don't want to know how you're doing right now. I mean, it is important. I want to know where you were, what happened when you were doing it. And I want to know the end, like what got you to where you are now. How long have you been here? How long did it take you?
Yeah.
And that way you can form like an outline in your mind. And I have notebooks upon notebooks of stuff. Like, so that's how I can go back to 2017 and see what I did. And I've documented literally everything. But when you take notes and when you do the research and you have the concrete data, it's like you're going to medical school.
Yeah.
You become your own doctor. And I can tell y'all right now, I have left Western medicine 100%. I did it this year and I've never felt more free. I've always been like, I've went natural. I've always had that in my life. And I went 100% natural in 2017. I still had some prescriptions I had to get rid of, and I'm free of those. I'm done.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Amen. And, speaking of it, I have bins, those great big plastic bins that have wheels. I have 5 of those things.
Oh my God.
5, because I had to print all of these studies, right? Because one, I learned that the CDC will take them down. And if you don't have the DOI number, you will never see them again. So I printed all these pertinent studies because I needed to have that evidence, because, going through this, both of you ladies know you're discarded. Whatever you say is discarded. And if you don't have the evidence backing up, they all say, oh, that's not true. No, here's the evidence. This is very much true. And so I'm like you. I saved everything. My husband says, we were going through them the other day. He says, do you really need to keep all these things? I said, yes, I don't know when I'm going to need them.
You know what? You're right about that, because years ago, this is just an instance. And I know some people that I can reach out to get the backup, because I was looking the other day and I found one thing, but I couldn't find the original one. And it was to do with organ and blood donation. And used to, the Red Cross would say, if you had Lyme disease, you could never give blood. You could never be an organ donor. They've changed that now. And you can't find the original paperwork. Now, those of us that have been sick, we save all that stuff.
Yeah.
And while I know I have the original thing somewhere, because that's when I quit being an organ donor. When I saw that, I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. And something always told me not to give blood. I don't know why, just something, higher power told me not to give blood. So talk about that, Carrie, because if someone gives blood or receives blood or gets an organ transplant from someone who's received the shot or who has a chronic serious illness, cancer, Lyme, parasites, whatever, you're giving that, you're receiving that.
Yes. And because the only thing that they test for are what the CDC has surveillance on. And when you look at cysticercosis, which is a tapeworm, there's no surveillance. When you look at Ascaris lumbricoides, which is rampant, no surveillance. Schistosomiasis, no surveillance. Lyme disease, no surveillance. We are really passing these things to that unsuspecting victim, because we don't do the proper testing. Just like here in the United States, prior to any surgery, everybody should be tested for all parasites, because anesthesia is going to cause them to migrate to different areas, right? Before steroids are given, the body should be tested for all parasites, because if someone has schistosomiasis, guess what? You're going to create a fatal hyperinfection. When you look at other countries outside of the UK and Denmark, these countries, you go to Iraq, Vietnam, Netherlands, Iran, India, Egypt, they all test their patients for parasites prior to surgeries because they know the danger associated. Here in the UK, Denmark, and the United States, we don't do it because your morbidity is a wealth maker for them. The surgeries, the hyperinfections, the constant testing, the constant pharmaceuticals, it's all about money. And so they're not going to test the bloods. They're not going to test the organs that are being donated for any kind of disease that's not being surveilled, which is definitely not a wide enough spectrum. And so these people, when they get the organ and it doesn't stick, it doesn't work, it's creating a problem, the person dies. You got to look at why. And we got to get back to asking that why question. As a 2-year-old, you say, don't run in the house. Why? Because you're going to trip and fall. Why? Because you got little feet. You know, those 2-year-olds, they ask that why question. And then as we go through life, we stop asking why and we take orders and directives. No, we've got to stop those directives and we've got to start asking why. So no, the Red Cross does not test for the wide spectrum and most rampant parasites in this country, which would be roundworms, Ascaris lumbricoides, schistosomiasis. They do surveil Toxoplasmosis gondii, but the testing is inept. The procedures for testing are all wrong. So when you talk to a parasitologist, it takes them only, like if you have the best parasitologist who doesn't need bench aids and he knows every single parasite and what the egg and the larvae look like, it takes him a minimum of 30 minutes. It would be hard in 30 minutes, but he could do it if you had the best one to do a stool sample test for parasites. In the United States, and I'm sure it's probably the same in UK and even Denmark, 10 minutes. 10 minutes is what they get to do a stool sample test.
And then, for all appointments, it's 10 minutes. They don't give you much time.
Yeah. And, you know, insurance dictates that.
Mm.
So we got to start asking, well, why is insurance dictating what's taking place? It's all about money and population control, transfer of wealth. We're going to take your money while you slowly suffer and die.
It's true. So, Carrie, why don't you tell us, because everyone, once they go to the doctor, they get their lab work done. They can even have a stool test done. Now, I have a friend who recently had a stool test done. He sent me the test results. I read them. I'm like, okay, well, this is what needs to happen. Now, I haven't been trained. I've been trained to read labs from reading my labs all of these years. And my mom's an RN, so she helps out sometimes too. So when I ask her stuff, and I've asked her plenty over the years, but they were going to they did give him 3 days of ivermectin, 3 days of antibiotic for H. pylori in the gut. That's not going to take care of anything. 3 days of anything is not going to. And this infuriated me because I'm like, this is the doctor's thing. And this doctor touted, we'll get to the root cause. How are you getting to the root cause with 3 days of anything and using pharmaceuticals? And I'm not against Western medicine or anything. I'm against what's going on and has been going on for years all around the world with all of this. And I don't know. I want to help people understand about the lab work, the proper places to go. No, it will not be cheap, and more than likely you'll have to pay out of pocket for it. But Carrie has a stool test on her website, parasitesinsideme.com, where you get a discount for doing the stool test. Now, when you get the results, you'll have to have someone help you read those. You either can take them into your trusted physician if you have one, or if not, maybe you can reach out to me and Carrie, and we can help you with that. But and we're not asking people to reach out to us. We're just saying we're here to help if we need to. And I didn't mean to volunteer you either, Carrie.
No, people call me all the time. I do my best to tell them my story of what I did. And like you said earlier, we're all different. We all have different toxicities. We all have different pathogens. And so what may work for me may not work for you. And it's just a matter of showing them where the resources are. They can go through and say, okay, these are my symptoms. This protocol may work for me, or this supplement may try to, help me. So it comes back to, they have to self-educate. They have to learn how to read their labs, because, when I started, before I discovered what my problem was, my labs were all resulting. My eosinophils were at a 12. My eosinophils shouldn't be more than a 3. And your eosinophils are indicative of a parasitic infection, because that part of your white blood count, those elements are the ones who attack the parasites. So if they're elevated, you have parasites. But here in Western medicine, we say it's an allergy. Well, National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease are encapsulated in one organization. That alone tells you right there that infectious disease and allergy are directly related. But the allopathic doctors, when they're doing labs, here's how it goes. So I'm in a specific region of Florida. When they're gauging my labs and giving me results, they are comparing me to my society, to my region. So if I live in a very sick region, my labs are going to show normal.
Yeah.
But if I go to a holistic doctor and I have my labs done, they're going to tell me what is my optimal range, not compared to society, but compared to what science says my optimal ranges should be. Because when my labs were showing I was having liver issues, renal failure, and parasitics were definitely being illuminated, and nobody picked up on it. So I had nobody to fix it, because they kept saying, no, everything is fine. Your labs are fine. So I had to go back and study. What does this mean? What does this mean? And dissect it to say, wait, they were wrong.
Because each lab has their own, each lab, you can go to 3 different labs and you'll get 3 different results, because each lab has their own positive, negative, high, low, whatever for your reading. And I know with Lyme disease, like my friend, Dr. Darren Ingalls, he says Lyme disease will throw your lab results off. And he's correct, because I know, like there was one time where they tested, because I used to do bioidentical hormones. They said my estrogen was 500 something, but I was still having symptoms of low estrogen. They wouldn't give me any estrogen. And I'm like, something's wrong. I'm telling you, something is wrong. And this is right before I found out I had Lyme. Then come to find out, Lyme parasites, whatever you want to call it, it was eating those pellets. So as soon as they would go in my body, I might feel good for a week, 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden it was like, I felt like I needed more, despite what my lab results said. So it's all screwed up.
Yeah, because parasites actually use your hormones.
Yeah. There you go.
And then you got to look at the water supply, right? Your water supply is nothing but poison. Cities across this country, states, the water is poison. And as long as you consume it, you will have a very difficult time to recover 100%. because you can't have fluoride and you can't use fluoridated toothpaste. And you've got to be careful what you consume because your thyroid needs it. If your thyroid cannot absorb iodine, which your whole body needs, it's going to throw off your hormones. And so your thyroid is one of the most important things that the water is destroying, and people don't realize how important it is. Look, we paid, well, our water system, we got a commercial water system because I didn't want no residential. I wanted the top of the line. And it retails for like 13, 14,000. But we had discounts and stuff like this, and we got it down to about 10. That was worth it for me because I probably spent a couple $100,000 on my medical.
Yeah.
And so when you balance out what is valuable, water is valuable, right? I'm not going to go back and repeat these mistakes. And so people need to understand that their water, it is hugely important in this battle of recovery to regain. And nothing is overnight. You're not going to get a water system and the next day feel like $1 million. There's several different aspects to working to regain your health, but water is huge.
You're right. We're the air we breathe, the water we drink, the foods we eat. Our foods do not have the vitamins and minerals that they used to have. Therefore, you have to take supplements with those. Now, this is what I want people to understand too. Again, not giving medical advice, going on our own journeys of what we've done. When you get diagnosed with a chronic illness, you're already depleted of all of those things. It's done. You got to get yourself back up to what is a normal range for you. Then you got to maintain that. How you're going to do that is using supplements to get yourself up there. The quality of your supplements, you got to do your research on that. Again, how they're processed, grown, harvested. A lot of them they spray dry with chemicals. You think you're eating something good? If you don't do your due diligence, you're wasting your time and money. Again, like the other stuff, you can take all the supplements in the world, but if your gut is not healed and balanced, you're not going to absorb those. It's like eating sweet tarts.
Do you want to hear a crazy story? There's a young lady in Denmark, and I've spoken to her several times over the last couple of years. Do you know that she is not, they're not allowed to order certain herbs?
What?
So I says, okay. I says, how about I mail them to you? And she says, because I'm just going to give them to her, She says, well, how much are they? I said, well, don't worry about it. I'm just going to give it to you. She says, I have to pay taxes on the value of it. I said, if I bought it for you for your birthday and I sent it to you, you've got to pay taxes on the birthday gift I'm sending to you? She says, yeah, we have to pay the taxes on it. And I said, well, how do they know? And I guess when it comes into their country, somehow they have a system to somebody's checking whatever, and they have to pay it. I said, you're kidding me. And so you see all these like little roadblocks that some are putting up to inhibit somebody else from getting well.
You're right. There's a gentleman I know in Africa. He has Lyme, and I was trying to help him. And he was saying it was easier for him to go to a chemist that could get the things from like India or whatever, but he's limited on what he can get. They don't have fresh fruits and vegetables there like we do. It would cost 3 times what the amount of the supplements would be in shipping to ship things for him to order things and get them shipped. And I said the same thing. What if I order them and ship them to you? It would be cheaper, right? Nope. Because the same thing that you just said, he has to pay for it.
Really?
This isn't just happening in one place or the other. This is why it's so important. In this day and age, we have the technology to be able to talk to people all over the world, and you should, because that is how you're going to find out what is going on in the world, how we can stop it, and how we can start from scratch and rebuild again. Like it's crazy. It is crazy.
We've got to get the government out of business.
True.
We've got to get them out of all private sector business, including healthcare.
Yes. We the people, they are supposed to work for us. We don't work for them. And what's happened is they have totally, and I can tell you your phone, that was designed to get you distracted. So, I mean, everything's been a distraction and we all fell for it. I fell for it, but I'm wide awake, and I'm getting like, the more I discover every day about stuff, when I talk to people or read or whatever, it's like, come on, why are people still falling for this? I don't know.
I spoke to a nurse a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to tell you something. This woman had her brain under lock and key. I was showing her the evidence on my phone of what we were speaking about. And do you know, even though it was evidence on the CDC's website, she wouldn't believe it. Wait a minute, you want to tell me all this is great? I'm trying to show you why maybe that thought process is flawed. I'm showing you the evidence, and you can't believe it. You won't allow yourself to believe it. This is what we're up against, is people who don't have the intellect to be able to open their minds and consider anything else. And I do think it is an intellectual issue.
Do you, though? Because do you think maybe it's so the research that I've done where I've figured out, like with the iodine, we're all made of energy. Iodine helps pull you up in your energy, helps you be connected. You want to talk about spirituality, it helps you be connected to your higher self so you can use that discernment, so you can think for yourself. Why do you think all of these things have been done so that we don't think for ourselves, so that we follow along and we do as we're told? And when you start to rebel against that, or when you start doing research on your own to better yourself and you start feeling better, I'm telling you, your thinking and everything starts getting a lot clearer. Iodine is one of the keys to this puzzle. And
that's why I say it's an intellect issue.
Oh, okay, good.
Because they don't have the capacity to be able to hear us, to read the evidence, because of all this stuff that they've consumed, the waters, the foods. They cannot even come close to opening their brain up to even see the light.
So if someone's
dummied them down.
That's true.
We've dummied them down. They can have 10 degrees.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean anything. It's just paper, because they've been dummied down from all these chemicals and poisons in their food.
So, Carrie, if someone's watching today and they're thinking, okay, this stuff is making sense, where should we direct them to start? Because you have to have a starting point. Well,
so, if they think that, if they have a lot of immune issues, a lot of diseases, the first thing I would do is I would do the test with PCI. I would do the full GI with the mouth swab. And that test is going to show them what bacterias that are in elevation were found. It's going to show them what parasitic eggs were found. And that's going to give them a starting point to be able to say, okay, I've got a nematode. Now I need to work to rectify this. Or my anthrax is way out of whack. Or my bacillus, or my charcot-laden crystals. Whatever it is that's identified that's out of whack, now they can work to pull those things back in. The next thing they need to do is they can also have their water tested through PCI to find out the same things, what pathogens are in it and what are the levels. Get themselves a reverse osmosis system to help with that stuff. Change their diet. All this, there's research out there. They just have to take a little time to research they can go find out about their water with ewg.org, and they can find every chemical that's in their water. So now they can see the seriousness of the impacts on their health through just their water. And it'll tell them carcinogen, it will tell them everything about that specific chemical. So that's going to be the first thing. The testing results that they would get from PCI, allopathic doctors, very few of them will use it. You are really going to have to hold that doctor down and say, oh no, this is what I resulted with, and you are going to treat me. And so there's going to be an element to that to be able to get them to do that. If they can't get that help, they're going to have to find a real good holistic doctor. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of holistic doctors out here today that are really taking advantage of people in these positions. And there are some doctors out west that want to charge $30,000 and $50,000, and these people are still sick. And so you've got to take the time to research that specific doctor, find out about what the reviews are, what the people are saying, what's their success rate before you go doling out a whole lot of money. I will tell you that Dr. Axe, both Jordan and Josh Axe, they are phenomenal. Dr. Darren Schmidt, he is also very much in the know, and he's phenomenal. Dr. Axe is not very expensive, where Dr. Darren Schmidt is a little more expensive, but the guys out west you're talking $30,000 and $50,000 and upwards of that. And so it comes down to just first finding out what ails you, and then diving into the research to find out how to rectify it, if you're able to do that on your own, like a lot of people have done. You both are testimony to that. Most 90% of the things that these people will go through and do are going to be on their own, maybe 10% doctor guided.
Well, I'm going to throw out some more names for people because Carrie's given a lot of great names. There's Dr. Darren Ingalls. He's in California. He is a thriver from Lyme disease, and he has MS. There's Dr. Jonathan Streit in Kansas. Both of these doctors have a facility, like Dr. Streit's facility and research place in Kansas. They will take you from step one all the way, from testing and everything, all the way through to treatment. And a lot of times they write off, like they'll quote you what to pay, and they'll write off if they go over. I've known them since 2019. They're legitimate places to go. Dr. Armin Schwartzbach in Germany. His lab, Sophie and I, we both know Dr. Armin. His lab, hands down, I feel, is the best. Don't you agree, Sophie?
Yeah, absolutely. And he's a great guy as well.
Yes. So we're throwing out some information for you guys. Go research these people because they have their resources for you to use. Go see if they speak to you. Listen to what your body says. Your body will tell you how to get well, how to heal it. Your body was designed to heal itself. So listen to it. I think we're all testament to that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Please join us for part 3 of our interview with Carrie in next week's Getting on My Nerves podcast.